Hey, we are talking about Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 3, Assimilation. We are going to give our spoiler free reviews of the episode, and then we are going to get into a spoiler breakdown of the episode, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Nathan.
I am David.
And I'm Colin.
Hey, we're starting a little bit later tonight. Had some technical difficulties, but to start our spoiler-free review, the spoiler-free logline of this episode is Picard and the crew travel back to 2024 Los Angeles in search of the Watcher, who can help them identify the point at which time diverge. Seven, Raffi and Rios venture out into an unfamiliar world 400 years in their past, while Picard and Jurati attempt to gather information from an unlikely and dangerous ally. So, David, what did you think of this episode?
At first, I was like, "This is going to be very different." It's kind of like a throwback where the original Star Trek series and the movies went back in time. So this is kind of a throwback, but this is more like to the point of like we know exactly what's going to happen, and we know like what fight are there. So I really like it how they kind of like get straight to the point, but doesn't drag on all the dialogues in every scene and everything. So which I appreciate. But there's some good twists in there that I did not expect at all. Especially there's a scene there with the Borg Queen which we'll talk about in a bit that I'm really impressed about. So I really like this one episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Colin, what did you think?
Yeah, for me, it was pretty much a pretty solid episode overall. I think that it reminded me a lot of the Voyager episode where they went back to the 90s. It kind of felt that way a lot, like the scenery, the sunny skies, and all of that. There was a lot of the callbacks to that particular episode. I think for those of you not familiar, it was the episode where the Voyager crew was time traveling and they went back in time. I think Sarah Silverman was in that episode. Actually, it was like a two-parter.
Yeah,
and I think the guy that was there was from like 30th century or something like that, and then he had ways to like develop technology to kind of advance the technology age during that time and stuff. So it was very callbacky to that part of it, and but overall I really did enjoy the episode. But there was one thing that I really was nitpicky about, but I'll get to that in the spoiler review. But overall, it's okay. I still enjoyed it, and I look forward to what will transpire later on.
yeah. I like the episode as well. For the most part, I don't know if I liked it as much as I did last week. Uh, as the spoiler-free description that Paramount provided says, they're back in 2024 Los Angeles, and it's lit similar to the way as Colin said, the episode from Voyager. So there was also an episode of DS9 where it wasn't as sunny, and they went back to the exact same year. So it's lit a bit differently. Maybe because they did most of that stuff inside of a set and the DS9 episode and not on the street. Also, I think by the time that Voyager episode debuted, they were starting to make some of the episodes in HD. So that's probably also why it looks a little bit better than the DS9 episode. There are a couple references to some of the things that were established in the DS9 episode, which we'll get to when we talk about some of the spoiler stuff. I think that, I mean, it was, like I said, it was an okay episode. I like the previous episode better, and I'll get to why specifically in the next when we get to the spoilers. But generally speaking, this didn't really advance the plot that much. It was kind of just like getting set in this era. So that's probably why I didn't like it that much. Whereas the last episode, it threw you into this new world, and there was a lot of world building, and there was a lot of like set dressing and production design. Seeing as how it's set basically 2 years in the future from where we are right now, there isn't as much production design and making the Los Angeles look like Los Angeles. So
Mm-hmm.
so there's that as well. But I enjoyed the episode. And I'm looking forward. There are some specific things that happen with the Borg Queen, as David said, that I find interesting. That we'll get into when we break it down in the spoiler section. That could be interesting in the future. So we'll see where that goes. So yeah. What we can do now is, I guess, jump into the spoiler talk of this episode. But what I will say is, if you're enjoying the conversation, please join the conversation by commenting down below and like and subscribe to help out the channel. We really appreciate it. And go see the episode. Spoilers ahead. Okay. All right, where do you guys want to start with this episode? I mean, there's kind of like two.
Yeah.
There's two plots. There's the like the description says. There's the plot with Raffi, Seven, and Rios when they leave the ship, and then there's the plot with Jurati and Picard, on the ship with the Borg Queen. Now, before that, we have where we left off in the last episode. The Confederation caught up to them, so we knew they were going to get away. They got away, but what we got in the last episode was that Elnor was shot. I didn't think they were going to kill Elnor, but they did kill Elnor at the beginning of this episode. It makes me think. And when they killed Elnor, I was like, you know what? When they killed Elnor, I was like, I didn't realize this because so much was happening in the last episode. But where's Soji? Isn't there either? So Elnor and Soji.
No, she's not.
Elnor and Soji aren't there now. It's mostly just the older people. All the younger people are dead or are not part of the season. So it's interesting how they set that up.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know how I feel about that because Elnor's a really interesting character. So is Soji. I understand why they probably couldn't get Soji in the show. Because it would be very convoluted to explain that androids are slaves, and it doesn't look like in this the new modified timeline that assumed would have gone off and made some human-like androids. So that's fine. But yeah, they killed off Elnor. I thought it was Go ahead.
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting choice in that you're eliminating both of the youngest and probably less experienced actors in Picard. I mean, all the rest of the actors are pretty much, they've been doing it for a while.
Except Jurati.
No, she has been in things. She was in so if you it's very interesting. She was in Scott Pilgrim, actually. She played the drummer in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I was actually shocked by that. So go see that movie. That movie is very interesting. See all the different types of people that are in that movie. But she was actually in it. But I think that there's a lot of that. I don't know whether or not because it's a reset by the writers and the producer of the show. And whether or not it's because they felt as though because of their lack of experience and screen time that they felt, oh well, we need to kind of write them off. Who knows?
I don't think they wrote them off completely though. So like I feel like they just put them in like a timeout for like several. They're not going to show up for like several episodes, which is an interesting choice. I think that they'll come back when they fix the timeline, but who knows how many episodes it's going to take them to fix the timeline. So they're gonna be away for a while. Which is, I mean, on the one hand, the storytelling can be more focused when it doesn't have to spread it across a bunch of characters. So hopefully that will mean that their storytelling will be a bit tighter. But I do like those characters, so I'd be interested. So I hope they don't spend that many episodes without them. I hope it doesn't take them it's 10 episodes this season, right? It's 10 or 8. Is it 10?
Yes, 10.
So it's episode 3. I hope it doesn't take them until like episode 7 to fix the time thing, the time issue. Because that would be like more than like 80% of the season without those two characters.
But it seems as though from all the trailers and stuff that they're going to spend a lot of time here, which is kind of strange to me. In that,
well,
yeah,
Rios
gets
himself in trouble, which is probably going to extend their stay.
There we go.
So if Rios didn't get himself in trouble, I mean, it wasn't his fault. He was kind of transported into the middle of the air, and so, but then he compounded the issue by trying to be a hero, instead of like putting his head down. But
yeah, that's actually one of my nitpicks, actually. But we can get into it later on. I think that there's a lot of things that happen before that happens to kind of go over before I start nitpicking on that.
Yeah. So they get away, but Eleanor dies, and Raffi is not just mad; she's big mad. She's like, and she's very mad. She's very mad at Picard specifically for his lack of leadership, and she's like, you and Q just play games with people's lives, and and he's like, no, that's just Q, and it's like, well, I don't know. I see this meme. I saw this meme the other day where like they were comparing Picard to Cisco. Picard quotes Shakespeare to Q. Cisco punches Q and never hears from him again. Picard has to deal with Q for the next 20 years. So I don't know. I feel like he maybe what she says is a little right. Maybe he likes the games a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like she's definitely in mourning, and she's definitely in shock, and she's definitely emotional. But I don't think that there's zero. What she has to say has zero credibility, because he could have handled him like Cisco handled him. So or like Mariner handles him. Like Mariner, if you've seen Lower Decks, Q shows up for a bit and he wants to play, and he's like, and she's like, go away, Q, and he goes away. So
there you go.
Maybe.
I remember that scene. Yeah, I was like, "What? That's it?"
Yeah, I just think it's because he has a attachment to Picard, and I think that's he likes messing around with him.
Yeah.
Just like if you see all those outtakes of all the Next Gen crew kind of messing around with Patrick Stewart, it's pretty much the same thing. It's like he's just trying to mess with him a lot because he's so uptight and stoic and stuff like that. It's just fun to like have that type of dynamic, in TV shows.
Yeah. So they peel off. Rios, Raffi, and Seven peel off to find the Watcher, while Picard and Jurati try to revive the Borg Queen, because apparently the calculations did pass, has knocked her out, and she's like running on low function. So Jurati and Picard, Jurati has to talk Picard into getting herself partially assimilated to try to get the Borg Queen back up. So there's a lot of interesting scenes there, and I guess we can talk about mostly the Jurati thing and Picard thing because it's a shorter plot, it's a subplot, but the interesting part is with the Borg Queen. So her conscious mind is connected to the Borg Queen, trying to boot her back up. So she's going through all her systems, and her subconscious mind is still out with Picard. And you see her going through all kinds of emotions. She has admiration for him, but then they go into a room where she's like very angry, and she snaps at him. And then there's she taps into her sadness, and she starts to get a little bit suicidal, I guess. And that's when he pulls her out, because she starts to give up. What I found interesting about this is mostly that she was able to outsmart the Borg Queen in her own mind, which was pretty cool. I mean, they always kind of hint at the fact that she's very smart. Not hint at the fact. They establish that she's very smart, right? She's like the preeminent person in robotics. Maybe only after Soong. So. or cybernetics rather.
She studied after Dr. Soong and everything. So
Well, she
after
she was she was under Bruce Maddox, right? And I'm sure
that's true.
before she left, she probably got a lot of information from Soong. So Soong is probably the leading cyberneticist, and then after him, she's the next person. So yeah, she's very smart, and the Borg Queen says that you've done something very. Would she say very impressive,
Dangerous.
very impressive and very dangerous. Very very dangerous and very unlikely or something like that, which is impress her. Because yeah, which it seems to me she's basically saying she wants her. She really wants her now. Now that she impressed her, she really wants her. She wants her to be part of her collective. She'll be her new Seven. So
pretty much.
Oh
yeah.
shit! Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
What she'll be like, Jurati of 7 or just no 7? Jurati of 9 or was it or 8 of 9? I don't know.
I don't know.
Probably not 8 of 9. I think.
She'd probably get a name like Locutus, because remember 7 was 7 of 9. There were 9 Borg drones. She was 7 of the 9th one. But she'll probably get a designation like, which I'm definitely there are two complications that'll probably keep them in the past for a while. I think that Jurati is probably going to get more assimilated, which is going to make them stay in the past longer than they need to be. And also they have to deal with Rios. So speaking of Rios, like I said, Rios 7 and Raffi leave the ship, and Jurati transports them to various places. I mean, she gets the right city. I mean, seeing as how I feel like they crashed in France, in the vineyard in France. Yeah, so they're seeing as how she transported them from France all the way to Los Angeles. I guess that she wasn't that bad. She wasn't that off, right? She at least got him. She at least got him in the right city all the way across the world. But yeah, they did not transport in the same place. and Rios transported like 6 feet in the air and hit his head and got a concussion. So
it'll be interesting. Star Trek road trip.
or
fly across the country or fly across the world to go to LA.
Yeah. Or hit on rooftops or those rooftop ladders.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that Jurati and Picard have restored the Borg Queen, they're probably the next task is to get power back up. So they'll probably restore power, and they won't have to fly there. They're basically in a forest that they're pretty well hidden because they crashed at night, right? I feel like some satellite should have caught them, or the French Air Force would have shot them down. Seeing as how they have it's 2024. We have sonar, so like if a plane
and probably in 2024, there's so many satellites out there by the Navy and other international satellites out there.
Yeah. So,
that's one of the nitpicks that I did not point out. But then in the beginning, when you were doing non-spoiler review, I was like, why wouldn't people detect them? Like they try to have that like BS notion when they said the moon's gravitational, you cannot detect and stuff like that. But you can detect by 2024. You can detect things that are floating in space. So that was a plot hole right there.
I will say this: they tried to handle that a couple of different ways with the Enterprise and also with Voyager. So when Enterprise went back in time in First Contact, I think that they tried to stay far enough out so that they wouldn't be spotted. And with Voyager, I think they did something with their signature, but those ships are a lot larger and probably will be a lot more difficult to miss. Whereas this is a much smaller cargo ship. That being said, I can excuse them not being spotted in orbit, but once they entered French airspace, France is not like the most formidable army in the world, but they are one of the most formidable armies in the world. They definitely have an air force. They definitely have sonar. They have missiles. They have nuclear weapons. So they would have noticed someone entering their airspace.
Yeah, that's a.
So yeah, that was a little weird. So yeah. Anyway, Rios gets taken to a facility because he says he doesn't want to go to the hospital, specifically because they want to keep a low profile, and because he's Latino, they take him to a clinic, which I guess makes sense. In what do you?
Yeah.
Another nitpick?
Yeah, that's my nitpick. Like, why does it have to be like, oh, you're in LA, so he speaks Spanish, so they have to do an undocumented story. It's like, oh, come on. Why do they have to do an undocumented story? It's like the writers were like saying, oh, he's Spanish, so he has no ID, so he's undocumented then we have to put him into an undocumented situation. I'm like, why do we need to do that? It's just it's more than a nitpick for me. I think it's a huge problem. It's not because these stories don't be told, but it's like you are coming up into a writer's room, and then you're like, oh, well, just say that because he speaks Spanish and he looks Spanish, then he's going to be an undocumented. Yeah, that's great. That's great storytelling. It's like, no, it's not actually. It's
not. I agree with Colin, because I'm like thinking when I saw him put into a Spanish-speaking clinic, which, you know, I get the idea they're trying to do a low profile, but the thing is that why of all things you must put it like a Spanish-speaking undocumented place and everything, and having places of undocumented immigrant. I'm thinking,
yeah.
It's still like it's like a stereotypical thing now.
Why you have an issue with that a little bit more? Because I'm trying to follow. Because like I'm just thinking back to TOS when they went back in time, and Kirk was telling Spock to
Check
play.
off.
Telling Spock to pretend like he's Chinese, which I feel like was far more problematic than this.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that.
What's your issue specifically?
Because nowadays, but everyone's very sensitive with particular people of color and everything, especially the past 4 years lately. They're saying that they're saying that usually undocumented people happen to be Latinas, unfortunately, and then they put that race. And somehow that became a racial profile on Latinas, which is not specifically true, but it's really awful for them. I think Colin would agree with me on that.
I just had an issue that, yes, you're trying to raise awareness about this, but I just feel as though it's more haphazard in a lot of ways, because it's just I get what they're trying to do, and I get the angle. It's like you're a fish out of water. But I just wish that they just didn't have to use that for Rios to advance a compelling story. You know, don't use the fact that he speaks Spanish and he is undocumented. So that means that you're going to go into some type of undocumented adventure. And it's like, no, like do something else that's like more than that. And I get, because it's the times and it's like 2024, I get it. But it's just, can't you do something else besides that? I mean, I just feel as though it's not I just find it very tiresome and very it's not offensive. I think that it's just tiresome that they would do something like this to his character, and to put him in a place where he gets arrested and then like by ICE and stuff like that. So it's like, come on, like just I think that they should use some other plot line for Rios besides using it in that way.
I mean, I get what you're saying to a certain extent, but like, would you have an issue if Raffi got pulled over by the police because she's a black woman? I mean, they're in 2024. These are things that happen in the world that right now. So
Yeah.
So would you have
I'm
have a
glad they
similar
didn't do
issue
that.
where
I'm glad they didn't do that.
No, I think that you're right in certain degrees, but I just think that it was kind of it's too on the nose, I think, for me. And I'm just thinking, why do you have to be so on the nose about it? Like, just yes, we know Rios speaks Spanish. Yes, we know that he doesn't have an ID. Yes, we know that he doesn't want to go to hospital. Okay, so you just conveniently just say, oh yeah, he's undocumented, and he happens to go to a hospital that is run by a doctor that is that treats undocumented people, or
well,
that brought in, he was brought in by a good Samaritan to a clinic that was treating undocumented people.
I mean, we have a very short time because we have to switch over and start talking about. I don't know. I didn't rub up against it as much as you did. So like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he's Latino didn't really factor in, or the fact that he's Latino didn't factor into him at all last season, except for the fact that he had a hologram that only spoke Spanish. Emmett, who we saw at the beginning in the first episode. So yeah, I don't know that it would be. Star Trek has never been subtle about the things that they're talking about. There was a whole thing with Chakotay, and they leaned into the Native American thing. They had a whole episode with set back in where Cisco was kind of thrust back in time, and he thought he was dreaming or whatever.
That was a good episode.
That was probably one of the best episodes of Star Trek, not just DS9. So they've never been subtle about talking about social issues. I don't think that they've ever tackled this particular issue before. Undocumented people in the U.S. So that's probably why they decided to do it, because they basically tackle all the social issues, and they're never subtle about the fact that they tackle social issues. So I think that was the thinking. They're thinking it. They're thinking the fact that he's Latino doesn't matter in 2400, but it does matter in 2024.
Yeah, but I just felt as though that they could have had his character do other things besides just that. I think that's like I said, too on the nose. I just think that's too on the nose. Yeah, I know, but I just think that
we don't know the exact, as Nathan just said, we just started his sub story rather, of what's going on. We don't know what's going to happen in the next episode, so maybe it's the start of something bigger, or something we find. Well, maybe the next episode will give us a clearer picture of why the writers chose this type of scenario for Rios himself. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, I'm even thinking back to the Cisco episode when he went back to 2024. That whole episode was set up to make commentary about homelessness. My nitpick about this episode is that they kind of only gave short lip service to that when Raffi is mugged by someone, right? She's mugged by someone, and she's mugged by a homeless person, and there's all these camps. Homelessness was an issue back in the 90s, and it's still an issue now, and it's even a worse issue now, and they spent less time on it. And when she left there, you saw on the sign Sanctuary District or whatever, but it wasn't as walled off as the one in San Francisco. No, that might be because the one in San Francisco is worse than the one in Los Angeles, but they definitely need to touch on that again, because I feel like if they're going to touch on the undocumented issue, which is definitely an issue in California, definitely an issue in the U.S., they definitely need to touch on the homelessness issue, and how we treat people who are unhoused, because that's a worse issue now. If they're going to tackle social issues, so that's my nitpick. Okay. If they're going to lean into it more. Because all of these things are allegories for our current world, right? So lean into it.
Of course.
Right. So
okay.
So maybe it's like a prologue, rather, about what's going to happen next in addressing these social issues, which I give credit. That's the only credit I give to these writers. So we'll see what happens in the next episode.
They did mention
So,
about the environment though, which is some good points.
that's
Yeah,
true.
we saw the
Seven did mention about that. That was
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah. I think Raffi said, I can't believe we didn't decline even quicker because, there's a lot. Everything that they're listing, the undocumented stuff, the homelessness, they're looking out and there's forest fires, all that stuff is happening. And it's not. And maybe that's why they're going to spend more time. Maybe that's why they're going to spend more time in the past as opposed to the previous times when they visited our past, because we have so many issues actually to talk about. Whereas like the Cisco episode was specifically focused on like homelessness and the way that we treat people who have mental illnesses. We just kind of lumped that we let them languish on the street. They're going to probably tackle lots of different issues because they're going to be there for a while and they're just going to see how our society is declining. So yeah. I don't know. What else did we cover? We have a couple minutes before we actually have to switch over to Discovery. What else happened in this episode that I missed?
I think we just covered everything, because the thing with this episode is it's like they made a broad and yet very narrow scope of all the things that's going on right now. Like, we know they jump into the past, they split into teams.
Yeah, two teams.
Yeah, 2 teams and everything, and then they revive the Borg Queen, and Jeri happened to be smarter than the Borg Queen, that now the Borg Queen wants her to be assimilated, and then the other 3 are looking for the Watcher, which still doesn't give us any hint of who the Watcher is. But Jeri did find out the coordinates, where the approximate coordinates
for the Borg Queen. Yes,
coordinates of the Watcher
at the end of this episode, like this is why I said I liked the previous episode a little bit better than this, because I don't think this advanced the story that much. What we got was Seven and Raffi going to the top of the tower. They did a scan. Raffi got a little bit of a blip and then it disappeared, and then they started to get Rios's comm badge because the kid was playing with it, and then Rios gets arrested at the end because, like I said, he kind of blundered in like a hero instead of like. I have an issue with that, not necessarily that he got assumed to be an illegal or undocumented person, because he is there with no papers and he speaks and he looks Latino.
He's trying to save the doctor.
But he's on a specific mission. He should have kept to the mission. So that's I mean, I'm sure that they did that to add more drama or whatever, but well, I guess
Nathan, he just got love struck. Okay, that's what it is. Come on,
sure.
It'll be funny.
She's a very pretty doctor. Yes.
It'll be it'll be a messed up twist if Rios find out that he is descendant of that doctor. That'll be more twisted.
Don't do that. Don't do Terminator. Please do not do Terminator. Please don't do Terminator. Please.
Yeah. That's that also could happen. So we'll see.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So after you guys got anything else, or I guess we can.
I'm good.
All right. So you heard what we think. We had some disagreements here, but we want to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below to join the conversation. Like and subscribe to get more content like this. And we will see you next time. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.